Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Inyash Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
And we have a guest with us today. Please say hello.
Hello, I'm Jacob Falkovich. I'm very excited to finally learn how to pronounce Inyash. I was actually kind of curious about this for a while. I'm actually also a member of the Bayesian Conspiracy because I got my start writing online through the rationalist community and Less Wrong. And then over time, I just transitioned to writing more and more about dating. Because whenever I've written about it, people wanted more. And they wanted to tell me more about their own dating lives. And now we're here to talk about dating.
How long have you been rationalist or in the rationalist community?
My rationalist origin story is a bit funny. So I came to the US in 2011 and came to business school, which is kind of like the anti-rationalist place. The epistemology of business school is the exact opposite of rationalist epistemology.
Oh no! What do they teach you?
Well, look, we had a class whose literally the motto is confidence is more important than correct. And you do a lot of exercises of how to talk confidently with a PowerPoint in your back and not stress the numbers too much because it's about narrative and selling the story. And I felt a little bit out of place as a math nerd coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Took a class in behavioral economics that introduced me to Kahneman and Tversky. But I actually discovered Less Wrong through an article making fun of Less Wrong on Slate.com just around the time of Rocco's Basilisk. So there was just some like mainstream, pretty sneery article talking about those weird nerds. And I think I was missing that energy so much in my life, the sincere nerdy energy that was like the opposite of business school, that I just read all of the sequences basically from start to finish in just the course of a couple of months.
That's fantastic.
But this happened in 2013.
That's awesome.
When Less Strong was about as dead as it has ever been in between the early period of activity and the Renaissance.
Mhm.
That's been led by, having an actual team that runs it and some money. So I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it for a while. It was just my own secret until I managed to find the in-person community in New York around 2014. I also happened to meet Tim Urban, World Wait But Why. Then I found out from him that he actually had a previous blog that he had written for 6 years that nobody has heard about, where he just practiced. And then when he thought he was good at writing, he launched Wait But Why. And Scott also did the same. Before he launched Slate Star Codex, he had his live journal.
Yeah.
I was just stuck on a really boring work project. So I thought, okay, great. I'll just practice writing for a few years and no one will read it until I get good. And then I'll launch my own rationalist blog.
Yeah.
And then Scott discovered my third post ever and linked to it. And I got 5,000 readers.
Damn.
So I was like, okay, no more practice. Here we go. This is live.
He took the training wheels right out from under you.
What was this third post?
Okay, so the third one was kind of hilarious. The third post was me asking why China doesn't have a good soccer team.
Huh.
When they have 1 billion people.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer was because the tails of a normal distribution drop much faster. The average person in your country is a little worse at soccer. You can't make up for it with extra population because once you get enough standard deviations out, the tails drop to zero super fast. So this somewhat convoluted mathematical argument for why population size doesn't correlate with the quality of your soccer team. But apparently it was just a sweet spot for making it the Slate Star Codex Links Roundup.
That is fascinating. It has some really big implications. That implies that what we should focus on is pursuing excellence rather than trying to get more people if we're looking to do great things as a species.
Yeah, well, I think this theory is explored in a lot of places. I know, like Gary Jones, the economist, wrote about the hive mind, the idea that the concentration of really smart people is what matters. Right, so if you guys live in Silicon Valley, the point of Silicon Valley is you just bring a lot of entrepreneurial smart people close enough together and people who are outliers. Right, like if you try to recreate Silicon Valley people and your idea was just, I will build a city of 80 million people, it might not be as good as the average person is just like slightly less good at creating tech companies. So yeah, like the average quality matters a lot, especially when you talk about huge numbers.
I had long been thinking having a bigger population is just straightforwardly good because it allows you to mine more and more from the leading tail edge. And part of the question is like, all right, we got this huge population so we can get more leading people. What do we do with all the more average people like myself that can't contribute but still had to be born in order to get that tail edge? If that's just straightforwardly wrong and we need to focus more on creating a general level of excellence in the, few 100,000 people we have, that implies drastically different things for what I should have been thinking about doing.
Well, a couple of things to that. One is, if you think of excellence as being multidimensional, if you think of there are 10 things people can be good at, and your particular combination of things that you're good at is probably quite unique. Right, so soccer, people try to play soccer, and soccer is maybe a combination of 2 or 3 traits, right? If you're not super fast, you don't have great stamina, you don't have great, dexterity with your feet, okay, it's going to be kind of hard. So you might think, I'm just like an extra. I'm an NPC in the world of world-class soccer. But yeah, like the space of all things humans can do that is useful is quite big. This also, by the way, relates to dating. A lot of people, when they think of their dating market, they're just going to think of total numbers. That people look at New York and they say, oh, dating in New York is so hard for women because if you look at, singles in New York, it's like 53% women and 47% men. What the fuck are you talking about? Like New York is 8 million people. Like if you apply any selection power to the specific people you want to date, those like overall numbers, the fact that there's like 50,000 extra single women somewhere, I don't know, widowed grandmas in the Bronx. That's not why your dating life is either easy or hard. Like, that's absurd. Both for talent or for dating, like actually selecting people for what you're looking for is much, much more important than raw numbers.
Well, that is why we are here, actually. You presented at Less Online in the summer. I took notes all the way through and I said, okay, I gotta at some point get Jacob on here because he has some really fascinating points about how everybody has been thinking about dating wrong. This could help quite a few people. And honestly, I just want to talk to him more about it because you had some really interesting ideas. So we're here to talk about dating. How did you start getting into the whole dating is the thing that's important to you?
One is just my personal love of the game. I love to hear gossip about dating from other people. Now I'm married and we're still dating. We're not monogamous. So I just love it. I'm excited by it. Kind of seems like the most fun thing that people do. And then the other side, and the side kind of more has to do with writing about it. If you think of a lot of the people we read who write about human nature, like trying to understand people seems to be the main thing that unites us. They don't write about dating a lot. Scott Alexander doesn't write about dating a lot. Eliezer doesn't write about dating a lot. Robin Hansen writes some weird things. It's almost kind of strange how this topic seems really underexplored when you think, okay, anything that is interesting about people finds some expression in dating. Agency, rationality, insecurity, people's identities, anything you can think of. And so I started writing about it in part because I was just like, why is no one else writing about it? Like, here's the stuff I want to know and find out.
Mhm.
And I think it really resonated. That those posts just immediately became my most popular. People who just started talking to me, like telling me about their own dating lives, sharing their own stories, etc. I'm just always up for hearing about this. Like I've never had anyone tell me, their dating takes or their personal dating stories that I was bored by it. So I discovered both that people want to read about it. It's a surprisingly underexplored topic by people who otherwise seem to be curious about everything that is human. And there aren't like really great overarching theories. It's a very anti-inductive field where there's not going to be like one core principle that once you understand that, everything else falls into place. Like any wisdom you're going to have is going to be very local and very much, okay, I start noticing the pattern in those 3 or 4 stories that I heard from specific people. And I think that's very much my style. Like, I don't think I would be a very good physicist trying to come up with some general theory. My dad is a physicist, and that's what he told me. That's why I came to the US for business school instead of doing physics. Yes, it was just a natural fit.
I kind of feel like you do have an overarching theory to unite dating, which is part of the reason I want to talk to you. Do you think that you have an overarching theory about this to unite the field?
Well, yeah, I have about 7.
Okay, 7 is good.
One of them is bound to be close to right, or rather, it's more likely one of the situations where lots of things are probably true.
Yeah, well, the theories is start look from the main question of, okay, why do people find dating so difficult and frustrating? Yeah, it's not obvious that they should, right? Like, why is it so hard to imagine a world where dating is just fun and we all just enjoy the process and we all, get someone we're matched with that we're pretty happy with? Like, it doesn't have to be so painful or so impossible for people.
Why do you think it's so hard?
Well, so I would say, okay, maybe the main problem people have is for some reason, modern dating is really discouraging of agency. People seem to be very passive and fatalistic. And even when they look for things in other areas of life, they want to make money, they want to make friends, they want to achieve something, they would formulate some plan and follow through. And then dating people much more tend to just muddle along. They almost present this way where they just want to present to the universe as being dateable. So they would deserve the right partner. It would somehow happen to them without them having to actually take ownership of this. But then again, like a lot of people are agentic and they still fail. So I have 10 other reasons or theories for, what their problem could be. And likewise, many thoughts about why in particular agency and ownership is so hard for people of their own dating lives.
I want to briefly go on to this idea of being generally dateable. I think you first introduced me to the concept during the Less Wrong presentation, where you started out giving everybody some notepaper and saying, write a list of what you're looking for in a partner. We all had like 3 minutes to do this. I would strongly encourage any listener to pause the podcast right now if they're not like driving a car, or maybe if they are driving, like pull over and do this, but like quickly write up a list of things that you are looking for in a partner. We'll give just a couple seconds to pause. Okay. Then, once we were all done writing, you said, pretty much everything on your list is bullshit. And then you went through why all these things are basically bullshit. Mostly what it came down to is everything on the list is a generic, I'm looking for someone of high sexual marketplace value. I want someone who's tall. I want someone who's smart. I want someone who's good looking. Your point was something along the lines of, if this is the same thing that 80% of people in your group would write down, then it's not really a criteria. You aren't saying much of anything. You aren't filtering out for people at all. Is that a correct summary?
Yeah, I think there's basically two sides of this coin. One is people don't have a strong sense of what they specifically want.
Mm-hmm.
And when people write very general things, right? Oh, I want someone who's a good person, who's attractive, who's funny, who's smart. Again, it doesn't really actually help you date in any way, having this list that everyone else has the same in common. Also, some of those desires aren't even truly yours.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe like you have a sense of, oh, yeah, I want to be a respected high status person, and respected high status people seem to have boyfriends who are tall or girlfriends who are skinny, partners with a respectable job, etc. Maybe the things you want, they actually are related to those, but in a very specific way that's unique to you. Like maybe you want a smart person because they just need to be like super competent because you feel like life is very difficult and you just want like a partner who can take care of stuff. And maybe you really just want someone that you can talk to about your own things. And maybe, you actually just want your kids to be smart. So even if you don't interact with your partner at all, you're just like happy to know they got a high score on a test. The other side of this coin is when people think of their own dating lives, a lot of what they're trying to do is they're basically trying to max out themselves and those universal traits that everyone is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just traits. Okay, like you can make yourself much smarter or taller. But there's a sort of way that a very dateable person looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That they're like nice to the waiter and they don't talk about their ex. They do this on the first date and then they do this and they kind of escalate things in a particular way. They don't demand too much of you, right? Because they're a cool person who's self-sufficient. Dating for them, it's like a particular size that it's supposed to occupy in their life. So people are trying to contort themselves into the shape of a generically dateable person. And I think this is very much tied to not having a strong idea of the very unique and authentic things that they want. I think if people do the exercise of figuring out what they want that isn't just the sort of stuff that is on everyone's list, it might be easier for them to also understand that they themselves can offer some very unique package. And it doesn't matter how unpopular it is generally, as long as the relative supply of what they're offering is not much larger than the demand, like they're still good, right? If you're like a very weird person, but there's a lot of people that you're exactly their type and no one else is, you're golden. But together you have to break out of this trap of just thinking of dating as, some sort of ranking of every person in the world on a single scale of attractiveness or dateability.
Yeah.
And think of it as unique people trying to find each other through the masses.
One thing that you write about a lot in this vein, which I really like, is the role of, I guess I want to call it like the gaze of society or the judgment of society, that a lot of people seem to be trying to optimize for. The rest of society will judge me of being relationship worthy, and they will judge my partner as being like equal to me of being a good partner. And they're much less thinking about like both themselves and the other person they're dating, and more thinking about how society views everything around them, which just seems to be terrible. I think you put it like a narcissist asks, how does this relationship reinforce my brand? How worthy does it make me seem? People who are less narcissist have a not such a direct question, but still seem to be optimizing for being perceived as relationship worthy rather than looking for an individual person somewhere.
Yeah, I think narcissism is, maybe an edge case here, but this is something that's common to everyone. I think one problem is the judgment of other people, right? Like how much other people respect you, what they think of you. You have that, and you have that internalized in your brain before you ever meet your dream partner that you're going to be with. So before you know what they're like, you have this idea of how different partners look on you, how people would judge you based on who you're with. Because your dating life is everyone's business.
Why is that?
Well, this is just like such a core thing of people. Like everyone's interested in gossip, everyone's interested in other people's relationships and relative status and how they're doing. I think it's the cultural, evolved, all the reasons, right? Like we're sexually producing animals in complex societies.
I understand other people being like interested in it. Like it's certainly an interesting thing who's dating who and why and all these other things. But like when you say it's other people's business, to me that implies that they have a stake in my relationship. That's the kind of thing that always really infuriates me. I'm like, why do you get to say anything about who I'm dating? On the one hand, I kind of get it. Your family in particular may need to support you if bad things happen. And if you're with an abusive partner who takes advantage of you and leaves you destitute or whatever, your family now has this extra burden of having to nurse you back to health.
Well, and they care about you.
And they care about you. Sure, right. So in that sense, I sort of get like why it's the business of people who love you, sort of what your relationship is. But like the greater society, there seems to be so much focus on people being worried of what society thinks about their relationships, and why is it any of their business at all?
I mean, I think it can just start from us being monkeys. One thing that I think people underestimate in the gaze of society is what I call, enforced attractiveness compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, if you see a very attractive person with a very unattractive person, and especially when the unattractive person is of your own sex and the attractive person is of the sex you want to date, you're like, oh, I wonder if I could steal them. And
I do not think that. Do people actually think that?
Some people, Mark, notice I think you'll accept this, Ignash, that people will notice like a disparity between like a 3 dating a 9.
I mean, sure, they'll notice it, but
I don't know if they want to necessarily seize that partner, depending certainly on their relationship status themselves. But the idea of like, how does that 3 get a 9? I think crosses people's minds.
no, that's an interesting question because it's like if that 3 got a 9, like holy shit, he's doing something right. I want to know what he's doing, But I don't want to like judge them and be like, how dare he date a 9 or she's terrible for dating a 3 kind of thing.
so the wanting to steal a partner, I don't mean people start making conscious plans and sending, sliding into DMs, although that definitely happens all the time.
Mhm.
And mate switching, mate guarding, it just happens everywhere. People cheat, people break up with their partners when their partner loses their job or gains 50 pounds. But it's just in us, like every animal does this. It in your brain, like whether you want to or not, even. And like, of course, you have a lot of power to not act on those desires. I think it's like quite good and not that difficult to be ethical in your dating life, but it's part of it. And another part of it is social structure, just like society getting along, is always somewhat precarious.
Hmm.
Like all of us basically playing along with the same script, I don't know, in a company, in a community, wherever. Romantic relationships are always a massive destabilizing force.
Hmm.
So think of every mythos. You have some normal situation, everybody gets along, and like, okay, what ruins the peace? Oh, the prince fell in love with the princess from a foreign kingdom. A mysterious stranger arrived, and like suddenly, the women are hot for him. Somebody betrayed their lover, and now there is conflict. We kind of want people around us to be simple and predictable, and in some sense under the control of social scripts, where they will just do what is expected of them, and we will all get along. And there aren't a lot of things that can shake people out of it. Going along with their social role, being normal, being interested in the current thing, consuming current product or whatever. And romance is one of them, right? Because it touches something so deep and primal about us. It can be so powerful. Like it's not irrational for people to be interested and look around who people are dating. How do they feel about the person they're dating? Like what's happening there? What does it mean about my own situation in the dating market or how people look at me, etc.
I have become convinced that I'm strongly out of the norm when it comes to relationship stuff. So my instincts don't generalize, but man, that just sounds like a complete self-own to me, that kind of stuff.
I think as a intuition pump here, there's a great picture in one of your posts here, Why Are Women Hot? With Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian. Pete Davidson, he's got a traditionally, I don't know, modest attractiveness physique and body and face, but he's also covered in like really shitty tattoos. He's popularly has lots of drug problems. He dated Ariana Grande and Kim Kardashian, not at the same time, but I think within a couple of years. And so people are wondering how is Pete Davidson pulling down these like A or maybe A minus list celebrities? I think I share your sort of apathy about the question, Ignash, but I think a lot of people do find this sort of thing interesting.
But also, like as a dater, you don't get to decide for other people that they won't be interested in it, right? So you go look at any gossip magazine, and the gossip magazines, right? Like Hollywood gossip isn't about how, oh, this producer got funding to make this film, and this actor agreed to a smaller contract. Even if that's maybe the thing the actual people in Hollywood care about, is money in making movies. But all the Hollywood gossip magazines are who cheated and who broke up with who, and who's dating who. Like we live in a society, and we live in a society where everyone cares about who everyone's dating
Like,
at all time.
let them talk. I gossip with my friends about who's dating who, but the idea that it would shape so much of your life that you can't date people, I don't know. I find that slightly distasteful. That what the greater society thinks would affect one's dating choices.
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to write about is once you're aware of it, you can decide, ideally, or at least you can move towards having more control over how much it should influence you. And I don't think the answer here is to opt out of social influence altogether, because that basically means being a schizophrenic. Like the guy in the asylum who hears voices and just does things that seem completely incomprehensible to anyone else. That's the only person who's truly free of symbolic order and mimetic desire and all the other ways that other people's judgment and view. You can think of it more as being an entrepreneur, right? So like an entrepreneur, in the end, is trying to create a company that's selling the product to people. But he can't just follow the script, because if you just follow the script, you don't create anything new. So you want to think of your own dating life, right? Be like a bit entrepreneurial, but not schizophrenic.
Yeah. I like that you in your post Go Fuck Someone, you kind of show how this can go badly too far in the opposite direction, in that people start diverting all their energy, say, into those markers of being perceived as relationship worthy, but you don't actually get better at dating by meditating or doing push-ups or learning great makeup. You say that self-development is riskless because progress is slow but assured, but opening yourself up for connection is scary, and that dating is an actual skill that you need to practice. You can't just make yourself more and more generally attractive and expect that a relationship is going to drop into your lap. You got to go out and have a bunch of shitty dates as you get slowly better at dating people. At what point do you think people should focus less on self-improvement? You got 2 degrees and you're ripped already. At what point do you go and start trying to ask out people and have awkward dates? Like, obviously some point before that.
Yeah, but those things aren't ever really in competition.
Okay.
I don't know. Like no one is ever. Well, I was gonna learn Spanish, but I guess instead, I will go into a relationship, start dating someone, and then should like take away too much of your Spanish learning or yoga practicing or whatever time. And in a sense, if you actually date people, you do learn what people actually want, and especially what people want from you. One thing I've done recently is the same exercise you were talking about, which was an exercise of trying to get people to get over their caged answer of what they're looking for and to get in touch with some more individual, authentic desires. I did the same exercise for my Substack subscribers and second person. And I did follow-up sessions with other people where, I would just like, ask them follow-up questions to try to get them to introspect a bit more deeply. I heard from a lot of guys, probably half the people who reached out to me, which is mostly the selection of who reads my Substack. And it's guys, usually live in the US, usually in New York or San Francisco, who are around 30, maybe late 20s, maybe mid 30s. They have their life basically figured out. Right? They have their job, they have their friends, they have their hobbies, they have their money, they have all the stuff they're good at. And the main problem is they just haven't been dating for a decade. And so they can't even really do this introspection exercise because almost they don't have enough context with women to get a sense of what they're looking for. It's another kind of scrambling, being like, I haven't really dated for 10 years. I've only had like a couple of relationships. Maybe they were kind of short. What do I do now? And really this thing seemed super aversive. And almost all of them basically get the sense from them, they want to skip dating. They just want to basically wake up with a wife tomorrow and not have to go through the kind of process of meeting other people, fucking around and finding out. Right? People don't want to be doing that. They want to just like kind of magically, everything else in their life is set.
I think that's probably kind of true for most like long ambitions. Like people want to have finished the book, not write the whole thing. They want to land their dream job, not climb the ladder, kind of thing.
I mean, I don't know. I've enjoyed 95% of first dates I've gone on. The first dates are so fun and exciting. Like, what could be more fun than that?
There's so much potential in front of you. You have no idea who this person is yet.
Yeah, but also I think part of why, and maybe I didn't really have it in the original post of Go Fuck Someone, is it goes both ways. I think people focus on self-improvement to give themselves permission not to date. So it's not actually they're thinking that, the fastest way to find a spouse is, to acquire one more feather in their feather stuffed cap. They don't actually like dating. They're kind of insecure about it. They feel uneasy about it. It makes them anxious. Self-improvement is a way to not really do anything about dating without having to admit to yourself that you're not actually doing anything about dating. Because you can tell yourself, well, I'm becoming more fuckable.
Yeah. You have a line in there that says, if your friends say, "I can't believe a great guy like you can't find a girlfriend," then that is not a compliment. They're saying
Yes.
that you have the resources to make someone happy and you're failing to do so.
Pretty much, yeah. I think it goes both ways. And I think they come together and reinforce each other. People who just develop this aversion, they have this aversion because they haven't done it, and so they're insecure, and so they're inexperienced, and then they just find ways to do things that look like trying to date without actually trying to date. So there was a guy who he posted the Sankey chart, also known in our circles as the fluffer chart.
Yes.
Uh, so he swiped 43,495 times an app.
Holy
He has the
shit.
Sankey chart. Obviously, none of them have led to him having a girlfriend because most of them didn't get back to him, and the few that did, it didn't go anywhere, and then only a few agreed to go on a date, and they all ghosted him. Okay, right. So this guy's, he swiped 43,494 times. The 495th time is not him actually doing anything. It's a way to tell himself he's doing something about it, but observably, he has proven to any p-value you want. This is not helping him find a wife, but it's something to do. There is not facing the fact that you are avoiding dating.
Yeah. When you said trying to find a relationship is like being an entrepreneur, the thing that most reminded me of is entrepreneurs are told to ask, what is a need out there in the market that is not being fulfilled? Where is a market failure that I can fix here? You said that the thing that starts any good relationship is the question, can I make someone happy? How do you go about answering that question? And is it really a question that everyone should ask before they start dating?
Yeah, I think that's very much what relationship should be based on. Someone that you can make happy with your specific combination of your traits, your skills, your general je ne sais quoi about you, and also motivation to do so. I like to think of love in the sense of the feeling that sustains a relationship is very much just motivation to just make another person happy, to just do what's good for them. If you have the motivation, you have the ability, that really should be kind of what it's founded on.
I think I completely agree. With the carve out obviously of the goal shouldn't be to sacrifice everything to make someone else happy. That's one terrible interpretation of that. But as a sub question of can I make someone happy, I think is also am I happy? Am I good to be around? What can I do to enhance someone else's life? Then, of course, assuming the other person's asking the same questions, then they'll feel the same way when they meet with you.
I mean, when you imagine your dream partner, if you just kind of had to invent them from scratch, you're probably not imagining someone who wants you to sacrifice everything for them. You want someone who is happy with you.
Yeah, exactly.
And in a sense, I think, a good idea when you go on dates is to have a good time
Mm-hmm.
and not have a miserable time because you want to select for people who are happy when you're happy. Being selfless isn't about being self-abnegating or self-sacrificing. If you imagine someone, it's okay, who's the person who you would make super happy by being their boyfriend? And how will I actually do it? The answer is almost never, by being the most generically dateable person that they've met that month. And they're just so happy with the reflected status of being my partner because, I am slightly taller and make 10K more than the previous boyfriend. That's why they're so happy when they met me.
I'm not sure you said these exact words, but the strong impression that comes through with your writing is this is why it's more important to just go on dates than to keep trying to eke out another % or two of sexual marketplace value. You can't make generally women happy, right? That's just a silly concept. But if you go on a date with someone, you start to learn who this person is and what can I do to make them happy. That answer is different for every single person out there. And there'll be a lot of commonalities. The people you date will have various things in common because there's only certain things you can offer. The people you're dating are going to have in common that they want the sort of things that you can offer. But that's kind of the goal of dating. And that's why dating itself is really important. And you got to start doing a lot of that rather than just becoming more dateable, because there's a limit. At some point, you just have to interact with actual human people and find out what it is that this person needs in their life and what they want, and how you guys can click together to give each other those things.
People usually hear this and they say, okay, but come on, like I'm not an idiot. I look around and I see that hot people have an easier time.
Hmm.
And that's true. The point I'm trying to make here is, I mean, everyone pretty much knows kind of what maxing out their SMV is like. Everyone is already trying to make themselves attractive and generally respectable, and I don't know, have a good career, dress appropriately, etc. Like almost no one is confused about this. About the fact that I don't know, more attractive people, more high status people, richer, thinner people, people with more friends, etc., do better. It's more that people forget that that's not actually the game. I have this idea that dating is really the first thing that most people do in their lives that's really important, that isn't about meeting some sort of general external standard or pleasing some authority. When you're in school, or even with your parents, or you're doing something else as a kid, your grades in school are kind of just about meeting some standard imposed by an outside authority. It's not about finding your own product market fit. Right? If someone else got an A plus and you copy exactly what they do, you also get an A plus. And it's just the standard and you meet it. Dating is the first thing that really isn't like that.
Hmm. Do you think people like in high school should be encouraged to actually start dating, figuring out what it's like?
Yeah. And like, what does it mean dating? Like, just go flirt with people, go banter with people, go talk to people, make friends of the opposite sex. Just explore who you're attracted to. Dating can be a lot of things. People can look for different relationships at different times of their lives. It's very rarely a bad idea unless it's really distracts you for something super important. I guess like I wouldn't come across, just kind of from the selection bias of who comes across, my think from people who somehow like messed up their life because they were too obsessed with dating. People who have a really acute crisis in their life. But I know, like if you were just like fired from your job and also, I don't know, you're like recovering from some illness, you're probably not at your best. And this is probably not the state in which you will find your ideal wife. But look, I just don't think people make that mistake. I think, when people are in acute crisis, they are trying to solve this acute crisis before going out and trying to date.
I want to ask about this thing you talk about called selfless dating, which seems amazing, but also absolutely terrifying. I'm still torn about whether this is a good idea, although having now been in a relationship with someone who does this, it is the most amazing thing I've experienced. But to quickly give it a rundown, you say normal dating is like hunting rabbits in the rabbit versus stag games, where you're keeping your options open, you're negotiating for what you want with your dating partner, you're investing a reasonable amount of effort, and like seeing if they're giving it back and judging them objectively and all those sorts of things. Whereas hunting stag is you just go all in on the date and you give an absolutely unreasonable amount selflessly to the other person and you give them the benefit of the doubt. And this seems to create really good relationships, but also seems scary as hell because I don't know, you could get taken advantage of. When should people do selfless dating? Like, what is your manifesto idea here on this concept?
Well, so the core idea here is you should do it when you can take the risk. Because the point of it is that it is risky. Like you're maximizing your upside by also taking more risk. Like a lot of things in life, that is the inherent trade-off here. So there are two ideas here. One is you want to make yourself resilient, right? So if you like come across someone who actually like takes advantage of you, then you will just get out of it after a couple months and it won't ruin your life. You would just say, okay, well, that person didn't reciprocate, so they were not what I was looking for. I could just take it on the chin and move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like proud of myself that, I jumped in the deep end. The person messed with me for a while. And in part, this requires, that you build some resilience and some strength in yourself. The second part here is I think it's important to do this not necessarily like more selflessly than you thought, but just earlier than you thought.
Mm.
A lot of people's idea is, you start off kind of where you're like circling each other, like two dogs, kind of the two wolves in the forest, not really sure what's happening. Maybe over time, you get into each other more and more. I think like the best way to select for someone that you can have a great relationship with, and a great relationship in the sense where you just like so easily give each other the full benefit of the doubt because they just want what's best for you, is if you just like start acting like that before it is justified to do so. Basically, the gamble you're taking is if the person is capable of having this sort of relationship with you, where they are also just going to do what they think is best for you as much as they can, then you will select for that. If you come across someone who isn't doing that, then you will be able to recover because you're strong and resilient and you won't have lost too much. Now, I don't know, maybe this is like partly written for me because I think like selflessness doesn't come natural to me.
Hmm.
Like if I've written something like more than you think is reasonable, I guess it means more than I think is reasonable. I could definitely imagine people who are more selfless than I am. The idea is that you're going for this idea of a relationship where both of you are just doing what's good for the couple at all times and you trust them to do it. And if they do something that's actually bad for you, then you treat it as pure mistake theory, like Scott Alexander calls it.
Mhm.
You just correct them as opposed to assuming they had bad intentions. Yeah, I think it's just a much better relationship to be in than one where it's like you and your health insurance company. You're always like presenting claims and compiling evidence and like
Yeah.
rules lawyering.
Yeah, yeah.
And also like the way to get there is basically to jump in first and see if the other person follows you because it is kind of a dark and dangerous land. Like I don't think you can rules lawyer your way into selflessness from a place of being guarded and doing a quid pro quo. Someone has to jump in first.
You write about how consent culture is pretty awful and like I agree it seems to turn relationships into contract negotiations rather than relationships, but and the question is like how what do we do then if we reject consent culture? And it seems like this is kind of your answer, that you do what the other person would want as best as you can figure it out. It's more risky and you're putting a lot more of yourself on the line, but it gets you into having an actual real relationship as opposed to a negotiation, which kind of sucks. You don't want a negotiation relationship.
I might flag here and just ask a quick definition of what you mean by consent culture, because I think that has at least one obvious interpretation that I think is not what you're talking about.
Well, one thing I've written about consent is just kind of in discussion of sex positivity, trying to round off that, well, if anything is like not positive about sex, it's because of lack of consent. Right? So like we just assume sex is by default positive. And if it's not, well, it's because someone didn't consent. And if they think they consented, but it still turned out bad and someone was unhappy, well, then it wasn't real consent because, there was a power differential or they didn't have full information or something else. This ties to part of talking about relationship is something that's your own specific unique thing that you just do with one other person when you're kind of saying a fuck it to society versus how society sees it. I feel like society really only sees two kinds of relationships: fucked up ones or okay ones. Like if consent was violated or if someone cheated or if like something else awful happened, like that's an awful relationship, that's fucked up. We're all gonna get together and judge it and condemn it and feel morally superior about ourselves. If nothing awful happened, then it's an okay relationship. And that's pretty much like as far as society can tell. Kind of what the outside view, like the view of people at large, can't really tell is the difference between an okay relationship and a truly great one. Like you can avoid the worst outcomes as far as they're visible to other people by negotiating things, primary of which is going to be consent. But then if you feel like a relationship where one person does all the housework is like really awful relationship, well, you can negotiate the household agreement of who exactly does how many dishes. And if you adhere to it strictly enough, that will guarantee that your relationship is at least a 6 out of 10. But you kind of can't get to 10 out of 10 by doing those things. And there's nothing that is really visible to the outsiders or that can be judged by society that can really tell you how to get from an okay relationship to a great one.
Yeah. Like you said, if you stick to the contract strongly enough, then you avoid liability, right? Like, oh, it's not my fault the relationship is bad. I stuck to the agreement. But avoiding liability is just an awful model for a relationship. You don't want a relationship based on avoiding liability. You want a relationship that's based on joy and loving each other and doing things for each other.
Yeah. Inviting society to invade your relationship is the cause of a lot of problems. And pretty much the quintessential example of it is the Reddit r/am I the asshole. And like, am I the asshole is you're living your relationship as like a performance for a jury. The jury may find you not guilty, but the jury will also find you probably not in a very happy relationship. If instead of solving your problems, you're like, well, my job isn't to solve this relationship problem, but just get the approval of online strangers. This is the mindset that is really inimical to great relationship. If you just constantly have this like eye of Sauron making your relationship decisions for you.
One of the challenges that I find with selfless dating, how did you put this? Hold on, I have it. Okay, here we go. On a deep level, they being incels in this case, incels think of women as men with tits. They imagine that women have the same goals and desires, the same frustrations. They judge men and women by the same standards. This was a huge problem for me for almost my entire life because I thought basically men and women are the same. This is a thing that I thought primarily because I was raised in liberal society where I was told explicitly that there is basically no difference between men and women aside from their genitals and upper body strength to a certain degree. How do you have selfless dating in a heterosexual relationship when men and women are actually significantly different, and it's much harder to model someone who is coming at life through a completely different perspective?
Well, so the idea of selfless dating is your intent, not that you should know ahead of time. I wrote this about men thinking of women with tits in a post about resentment. Kind of noticing that this is a thing that the radical manosphere really actually has in common with feminism, even though it conceives of itself as being the anti-feminism, is that fundamentally it kind of thinks of men and women being the same. Like, what if you were a super hot guy that all the women wanted to sleep with? That's how you should understand the very hot woman. Yeah, like I think a precondition to selflessness is the sort of attitude, actually something I didn't write about in that post that I think is a useful guide for this, is Joe Carsmith writing about green and the mood of green from the Magic the Gathering color wheel. The sort of respect for something that is alien. Something is so different from you and you want to be open to it and maybe even like do what's good for it, but not judging it by your standards. Always remembering that it is alien and different, that it has its own standards, and that you will inevitably fuck up and need to update. That's the actual practice of selfless dating. Keep it in mind that the other is alien and fucking up and updating. And also just learning to accept them. But like one thing I joked about is there are like little annoying things that my wife would do. They're like really hard for me to get over until I started thinking of them as basically like her performance art. Including like the completely innocuous things, right? I don't know. She would just apologize for things that aren't her fault, even though she's not even Canadian. She would pack 9 sweaters for a 7-day summer vacation. Like, why are you doing that? This is clearly wrong. And I was like, oh, no, this is just like, it's aesthetics. It's performance art. This is not something that I need to like understand and justify by some like, value metric spreadsheet I have. I just need to take it. And I think you have to develop this mindset about the entire opposite sex.
Yeah.
And then specifically, even about the person you're in love with. And then it's actually easier to be selfless because some of their desires are going to be like really weird to you. They're not the things that you would want for yourself. It's things that they want for themselves that make no fucking sense to you.
Yeah.
Joe gives this example of like why not cut down a giant sequoia tree? Like you don't really know much about the sequoia tree. You just see this giant tree, you just feel like you're supposed to respect it. You feel like it doesn't really want to be cut down, even though you can't prove that it has a brain or desires or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like okay. Or if you see an octopus, like in the movie My Octopus Teacher, always remember that mood and keep it in mind. I think is an important component.
I love this idea of exploring the alien. Like a lot of people complain that they're born too late to explore the, great unexplored complements, but too early to go off and explore the planets out there. And yet you have this entire opposite sex and just other people in general. Like every person can be this weird thing to explore that could take years to get. Maybe never you would get them fully, There's just this infinite replayability out there if you just really are curious and try to explore what makes other people go and how you can make them happy, how they can interact with you.
This is very funny. At Lesson 9, I talked to Agnes Callard, the philosopher,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that she's very worried when she starts thinking about some topic, that it's going to turn out to be one of those topics where you can't really arrive at a satisfying answer. That seemed wild to me because one of the reasons I like to think about dating is I very much think it's this sort of topic. Like it's this giant continent that can never in principle be fully explored. It is actually different for every human being on the planet. And like I only want to spend my time thinking about endlessly explorable topics and not something that I could write a definitive book and be like, okay, that's it. I've said everything there is to say. I'm done. QED.
The idea of learning about the alien, that seems like it would be very easy to hear, and people would think of, I don't know, what, r/incel or something, right? Like, oh, they're ununderstandable. You just have to, and I know this isn't what you're saying. I'm just saying it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to elaborate on it a bit more and maybe look at things that could be observed in the reverse, although that might be harder given that we're all guys. But like, what behaviors of ours are completely inscrutable? Like an example that you hit of a nice, to me, inscrutable example in some women's behavior is body enhancement surgery, whether it's a facelift or something, right? People will get these, like celebrities who are in their 40s, and then they look way worse, I think, by any metric, maybe other than their own. or married women in their 70s who have been with the same partner for 45 years and they're happy, but they want a younger looking neck. So to me, those are kind of inscrutable because it's like guys don't notice that stuff. And you're not, for example, like with a hypothetical older married woman, she's not looking for a partner. She's not trying to impress her current partner, right? And you do have a nice quote that was in Why Are Women Hot that sort of answers that second one. But I also just wanted to kind of just see if anyone could think of examples of things that we do that are just as inscrutable from the outside.
It's actually the post I'm working on right now. There was a Substack where I stated named Crypto Gal who wrote about performative femininity. Wearing heels, I don't know, push a bra, modulating your voice as a woman to sound more childlike or something. And she says, okay, like, oh, women actually hate doing this. They don't do it when they're by themselves. They only do it for the male gaze. And then as you said, okay, this doesn't actually make sense because like nobody's ever telling their wife, oh yeah, no, like it doesn't matter that we're late, take 20 more minutes to put on your mascara. There's like something complex happening here in terms of, okay, women do some of the stuff for affect, how they're seen by men, but in part to affect how they're judged by other women. And maybe some things men don't see directly, but men actually do want to be with someone who is respected by other women. And if women judge their own hierarchy based on how well people do this performance of femininity, and that is something that's important to people, even if they don't realize it. But like if you're a guy, you're going to end up marrying a woman who you think is very beautiful, and she's going to be insecure about her looks, unless she's one of like a really, really, really rare minority of women who aren't. And that's just going to seem super baffling to you. You're like, why are you obsessed about the fact that you gained 2 pounds here? Or, she will notice things about her nose that like you had no idea. And that's like one of those things that you just have to accept and respect. That she's going to have some weird obsessions or artistic anxieties about her appearance. You just kind of need to reassure her and respect her. Right? Like, I don't think it can be easily summed into of like, oh, like the fact that you need to have feminine lips is just to maximize this sort of function that is the sum of like, how like those particular men and those women think of you. And you can actually maximize this function by doing these other things. Now you can stop worrying about it. Because this is actually how it happened. You can't hack those things completely. And at some point, you just have to accept that's what people care about. Then, yeah, no, like for my side, like I'm a huge sports fan. That's just something that's completely incomprehensible to most rationalists and also to my wife. That I get like way too emotionally invested in what some 11 dudes are doing on a soccer pitch on the other side of the world. Like some rationalists make fun of me and call it sports ball, and my wife has learned that that's just what I'm into.
I think that's a good example. And anyone who makes fun of you for it should shut up. People should just enjoy other people enjoying stuff. I've come to enjoy sports more as an adult. Like I still can't name any like more than a handful of famous players or something of any of when you combine every major sport. But I enjoy the spectacle of watching people perform feats that I can't do, and the best of the best competing at stuff. So I've been married for 5 years, but we were together for like 9 or 10 before that. Like I know people have eyebrows, I've seen them and I noticed them, but I never like I would never notice. Oh, that person got their eyebrows changed unless they changed them to hot pink or shaved them off maybe. Although not even necessarily shaved them off. Apparently, my sister's eyebrows and eyelashes came out when she was pregnant, and I didn't notice. But it's something that my wife notices and can clock immediately. But like other than Eugene Levy, I don't notice eyebrows. And like another proclivity that might be more male coded would be pointless video games, not the fun ones, the stupid ones.
That's quite a value judgment, though.
Well, yes, but I mean, like the cookie clicker ones, and maybe that isn't just guys who do it, but I'm just trying to think of like stupid things that I do that I can't explain to other people. And it's like I like when the number gets bigger. Like that's not a good explanation, right?
It's as good as any other.
There's also a bit of a secret here to how like good marriages work, which is realize, okay, is this supposed to be a partnership or we're both bringing complementary skills? And complementary skills means there are things in your life that you just suck at, some virtues that you've never developed and you never will. Well, good news is you don't have to, because you could just like marry someone who just does that. And now you have that great thing in your life. But also what's going to come with it is, they're going to be kind of incomprehensible to you. Like you marrying your clone wouldn't actually work out that great.
Yeah, we'd be bored.
Yeah, well, if you're bored, then just like, well, all the stuff that you're currently bad at in your life, now you'll still be bad at.
Oh yeah, we'd continue to suck at that too. That's for sure. Yeah.
the person I'm dating who does the selfless dating thing really made me feel much better about my sex, because I've been pretty much against men most of my life. She kind of opened my eyes to the fact that, like you said, like the best relationships are ones where there's a complement, where each person does some things the other person can't do, and they bring those for each other. And she has a strong opinion, objectively, on average, there are some things men are better at and some things women are better at. And the best relationships are the ones where the women really appreciate the things that the men are generally better at, and vice versa. Obviously, it doesn't generalize to every single human, but it generalizes enough that it gets her very angry whenever other people say things like men are trash. And it's really made me feel like this is a great model to have of intersex relationships in general. The other sex really does have some things that they are generally significantly better at, and we can get a lot of gains from trade by looking at each other as partners that we trade with the selfless aspect that you were talking about, rather than we're trying to get units of affection and units of sex and units of compassion from.
Yeah. I briefly dated a girl who was like a really deep misogynist. She just thought that women are basically all awful. It was kind of funny. Lots of our arguments for me trying to convince her that women are actually great. She thought, I don't know, I'm being facetious and not serious.
Yeah. Oh, she thought you were being facetious when you did that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
No,
damn.
I always say, no, I really like women.
Yeah.
She deeply disliked women.
Oh, man.
The way, like, I don't even know as many guys who dislike women as deeply as she did.
Yeah. Okay. I stumbled across, when I was re-reviewing stuff for this podcast, I stumbled across an article that I had missed before, where you steel man monogamy, which I found fantastic. The thing you said is that, so we have this friend, Yassine Maskout, has a strong opinion that monogamy is valuable because you give up having sex with other people, and that in itself is a strong signal and a strong sacrifice of something. It didn't particularly make sense to me, but you say that the steel man of monogamy is that everyone basically has attraction to others who are not their primary partner. Making the sacrifice of saying, I will not sleep with anyone else, is in fact a big sacrifice, and it's a big deal, and respecting that is actually kind of really nice. And a lot of the problem with nowadays is that the default mindset seems to be that people just feel they're trivially entitled to the other people being monogamous, as opposed to respecting it as a sacrifice they're making.
Yeah, I mean, you see it as a very obvious thing, right? Like, one person in a marriage comes back from a work trip, and they say, at our hotel, this attractive coworker was flirting with me, but I said, no, I can't do it. I'm married. Like, if you saw this in like a normal mainstream movie, you'd expect the other person to get mad. Like, what were you doing in the hotel? What exactly did she say? Like your spouse is more suspicious of you. Okay, look, that's stupid. The reaction here should be gratitude.
Right.
Thank you for sacrificing a hot affair with your coworker just for me. Like, Ayla did some research about how couples who are monogamish and maybe have some like unclear boundaries are less happy than completely monogamous or completely non-monogamous couples. I think we have this unfortunate combination of people both feeling kind of entitled to monogamy and not really seeing it as a precious gift and a sacrifice, but also not really being super clear or strict, because there aren't really external standards, right? It's not like, okay, we all go to the rabbi and the rabbi tells us what exactly counts or not. Then people end up with, oh, you liked her Instagram post. Oh, you went out and, okay, you had a drink together. So what? Okay, she just brushed against your leg, but you didn't do anything. Is that okay? Is that not okay? Like, the social script is that you should be monogamous, but also not to make too big a deal of it. Instead of, you looking deep in your soul and deciding, okay, do I want to be polyamorous or do I want to be monogamous? If I want to be monogamous, what exactly do I want? And how important is it to me? And then, like, if a partner gives it to me, I would be very grateful and respectful of this special gift.
Yeah. You make the point that if somebody attractive is flirting with you and you don't flirt back and you don't move on it at all, like, that is a legitimate sacrifice that you're giving up for your partner. And you make the point that when people's sacrifices are just kind of ignored, when they're like, oh, that wasn't a sacrifice, people like it when their sacrifices are at least recognized and be like, thank you for doing that for me. And when it's like, well, of course you should have always done that, that's not even a sacrifice, people tend to get resentful, and resentment really kills relationships.
Yeah, I think also, like, some people actually do stop being attracted to other people, or not as much. There is a measure called social sexuality. There's like a measure of your general slightness or how much you like sex and flirting as a way to just connect with other people.
Mhm.
People who aren't highly social sexual do tend to be, once they're in the relationship, or maybe they're just very demisexual. They really need to like know someone deeply and be vulnerable before they develop any sexual feelings. Right. So if someone isn't really attracted to anyone else ever, and that they found out that their partner is, and is just choosing not to act on it out of loyalty, right? They might see their partner as someone deficient.
Hmm.
And again, in part because maybe the very like mainstream Disney rom-com narrative is that you just stop being attracted to other people. And if you are attracted to other people, it's because something is wrong in your relationship. And again, this is kind of like absurd,
Yeah.
if you just like realize that we're animals.
If they hadn't been attracted to women in general, they wouldn't have been attracted to you in the first place at all. It's not like a switch that you flip on and off.
Yeah, but also like you can't really tell ahead of time how generally attracted to other people somebody will be once they're in a relationship. So probably the stereotype is, men are a bit more like that than women. But I think both of those are like super, super wide bell curves with a lot of overlap. Like I just happen to be non-monogamous specifically with my wife. I could have imagined myself, married to someone else and actually been monogamous if it was very important to her, or if my wife decides that it's going to be important to her. But I was still very open about the fact that I have always been attracted to almost every single female friend I've had. I will probably continue being so for the rest of my life. That's just how I'm built. And
Yeah.
now I can like choose what to do with it. And if that makes you mad, then you should probably date someone a lot less horny and sociosexual than me.
Right. I do think it would be good if people, at the very least, were to tell their other partners about times where they maybe had some opportunity to flirt or to pursue other people and then they didn't, and like show gratitude to each other for that if they're monogamous. But I don't know. I'm not monogamous, so maybe this is the worst idea in the world. But it seems like a thing that would make people feel more gratitude and more joy in their relationships.
I think it would definitely help reinforce that a sacrifice is being made.
Yeah.
And as you guys are saying, that I don't want to say like they want a pat on the back for it or a gold medal, but it's just like, hey, this thing that we've committed to, I'm still serious about. So I think that sort of thing helps.
And part of it goes back to what we talked about selflessness and kind of respecting the alien is you want to be curious about the other person. Like what it's like being your partner, not just what they observably do, as opposed to just assuming things about them. How attracted they are to different people in their lives seems like something's were like very important to them. And so if there's this thing that's probably quite important to them, or at least, occupy some of their mind share. Okay, maybe they like don't want to tell you, maybe that's fine. But to not be curious at all about this, I think goes against the spirit of being curious about the other person and also respecting their differences and like expecting them to be different from the get-go, different and slightly incomprehensible, and that's fine.
And I think you also made the point that when people talk about other sacrifices they've made, like, oh my God, my weekend was so hard. This thing happened with the kids and this went wrong in the house and I spent all this time fixing this stuff. Your partner generally is like, thank you. That's awesome. That was a sacrifice and I appreciate it. And the whole, I didn't pursue this sexual opportunity I could have is the one exception where even mentioning that is the thing that would get you hate, as opposed to, thank you, I appreciate it kind of response.
By the way, that's another big difference between contract relationships and selfless relationships. In a selfless relationship, if your partner really makes some sacrifice for you, that's great because now like you're just both happy, right? Like they demonstrated that they're committed to this path of selflessness and you're more secure that they showed it to you. And now like you both can trust each other that you'll keep doing that going forward. And if you're in a more contractual relationship, that's actually bad for you because now you have a debit in your ledger that you will need to pay back, right?
Yeah.
Like, they will bring it up somewhere. It can be held against you. Like, man, like you just don't want to end up in this situation where your partner doing something awesome for you makes you like kind of upset because the ledger is imbalanced.
Yeah, I think relationships with ledgers are the not happy ones. I've seen those relationships, and those aren't, in my experience, happy people.
Like it might make sense to have sort of relationship with your employer. Because I always used to say, I don't love my job. I like it as a friend.
That's exactly. I was trying to think of something of that same vein, but I couldn't think of anything half as pithy as that. But yeah, that's the thing is I wouldn't marry my job.
Yeah, you want to you want marriage to be right, marriage and your kids, the one relationship where you hope you don't have to resort to pull it out the spreadsheet
Or threatening to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked your observation that most of the hate you get online for being polyamorous is for people who are doing the monogamy thing poorly.
Yeah, or just people in general that monogamy seems to be not working for them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they feel like, oh, it would be nice if there was this like super strong monogamy that we all just agree to and nobody would date around and everybody would just like match up one on one. Like they need monogamy to save them. And they feel like I'm attacking this one thing that's their last hope.
Yeah.
Whereas anyone who's securely and happily married, and you tell them about polyamory, they're like, huh? Okay, whatever you weird kids are up to these days, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
they're not, they might not approve of it, but they don't really get worked up about it
Yeah.
because they don't feel attacked in any way by it. There are other things that you can equally argue are like good or bad for, I don't know, the survival of civilization that don't get people that worked up.
Yeah, and also those also aren't the reasons people bring up to like defend their monogamy. No one says, well, the survival of the species requires some version of stable parental care and yada yada. Like nobody says that.
Oh, I've seen
It's like,
people
oh,
say that.
there are
Right.
harem. People say, oh, but there are like, polyamory is it's gonna turn into polygamy. There's gonna be some men with harems, and then we're gonna have all those single men who can get laid, and that's a destabilizing force, and that will cause violence. Okay, that's like an open academic question. We can do the anthropological research, but no one has ever decided whether, they like or hate polyamory because they learned this sort of,
Oh,
you
right.
know, argument from history, right? Like they decide how they feel about it first, and then they read something about the surplus of single men and violence in classical society. It's a very post hoc thing.
That's my experience. I want to read a lot more of your posts. I've only read a couple, and I've enjoyed them. You've got a fun way of writing, and I think your examples are they walk the like Scott Alexander line of being like engaging and funny. So if anyone is least bit curious, just got to say Jacob has a great writing style.
There's a app that looks at your Twitter profile and gives you a Twitter recap for the year.
Mhm.
And it told me that my Twitter twin is Scott Alexander, and it's the biggest compliment I've gotten
That's
in
awesome.
years.
Cool.
I'm writing at secondperson.dating by Substack. And I started writing it. Basically, I wrote a book outline and a lot of ideas for future posts. But I do feel like I've figured out just so many new things and insights and ideas just in the 3 months since I've started
Hmm.
that I'm really happy I didn't just like sit in the room alone and write a book, but actually started, basically working in public and doing it as a Substack. So hopefully by the time I'm done with the Substack, I will actually have figured out something about dating.
Is it because the Substack gives you like real-time feedback in the comments?
Yeah, the comments, usually I have an idea and I would tweet some raw version of it and see how people react.
Hmm.
And then just the process of like writing it out, knowing that people are going to read it every Friday when I publish. Yeah, it kind of changes how I think. Also, it means, I keep reading other people's work and keep talking to a lot of people and changing my mind about stuff.
Okay. Yeah, being constantly immersed in that milieu, in a bunch of people doing this together. It's almost like being in a pop-up city for dating.
Yeah, but I just feel like when I write a Substack post, it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm writing the final word on topic. Whereas if I was actually writing it as a book to be published, I would feel that everything I have to write should, in some sense, feel like the final word. I mean, I do very much enjoy about Substack that, even during this conversation, just making connections between this selfless dating and seeing the other as an alien.
Mhm.
Like, I actually haven't made this connection until we just brought it up and talked about it.
Oh, nice. Do you still blog at Put a Num on It as well?
Now, unfortunately, Put the Num on It is on hiatus.
Okay.
But Put the Num on It became more and more of a dating blog, and then I just started the dating blog. Put the Num on It had a lot of general takes on rationality, math, social science, whatever, and most of those, I'm just too lazy to really write them up in long Put the Num on It post, and everyone who's curious about those can just follow me on Twitter at Yashkaf.
So any new takes on Chinese soccer are going to be at your Twitter.
Yeah, all my soccer takes are exclusively on Twitter, and I warn people ahead of time to mute it because none of my Twitter mutuals care about soccer either.
Awesome. So once again, you can find Jacob at Yashkov on Twitter and also at secondperson.dating.
That's the place.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. This was a good conversation. And once again, I'll just plug Put a Num on It. We'll put a link in the show notes too, just because that's where I'm finding the original articles. But I will check out your Substack right after this. So once again, thanks. This was a lot of fun.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Steven, welcome back.
Thanks, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. It's a beautiful day out here, and
we're laughing because we're talking before we started recording. It is currently sunny outside and 10 degrees in Denver. So
yeah, I miss those days.
I went out. The snow is so light that I've just been brushing it. Like I don't need a shovel, and so my driveway is pristine with just a broom.
Everything's pretty and the air is crisp, and you just stay home, and the sun is. Oh yeah, it's great days.
There's a fun bracing excitement about like the fact that walking to the mailbox is physically painful,
Yes,
but it's nice to then come inside and stay warm. So
Yeah.
it pumps that gratitude button.
it really does. But the first thing we are here to do is talk about our friends over at the Guild of the Rose.
Oh yes.
They are our friends who run an organization to help people level up their rationality skills and to just in general raise the rationality waterline throughout society.
That's right. They do this through online cohorts. Well, you can get started at guildoftheRose.org. The thing that sets them apart from just reading in your basement is that you're doing it with friends, or rather,
Yeah.
soon to be friends. It's outstanding. Great networking just to meet people that are like minded. At least half of the success of rationality is coming from the culture and the people there to help reinforce your skills. Just like you
Yes.
can't get better at, jujitsu by yourself in your basement, right?
Yeah. The thing that kind of now stands out to me is Jacob Falkovich. He had the post about the Chinese soccer players and him saying that because the tails drop off so significantly, just adjusting the population average a little bit results in really huge gains on the far edge margins. It reminded me that the Guild of Rose is trying to edge the total level of rationality just a little bit over to the right. Just increase the baseline somewhat, make everything a tiny bit better, but this will also mean that the tails have significantly more people in them on the extremes, which is exactly what we want in our society.
We like a good high spread tail, especially on the right side of it.
Hell yeah.
Anyone who's listening who hasn't gone to the guildoftheRose.org, seriously check it out. Whether you're looking to enhance your career, boost creativity, expand your general knowledge of stuff, the Guild of the Rose provides the tools and community you need to succeed. I love it. I give them money. Everyone should. At the very least, check them out and check out the skill tree. That's right, skill tree. It's like a video game. I won't elaborate.
Well, as long as we're talking about promoting things, can I talk about my thing?
Is it the thing I have in my Amazon cart right now?
It probably is.
All right.
I've published another book. This is a collection of my short stories, 11 short stories that I have written over the past few years. 10 of them have been published somewhere else, although some of those just aren't available anymore. I know at least one book is out of print. I'm going on too long.
Well, I think that what you're saying is that this is exclusive Eneasz Brodsky fiction, and that some of it, while historically was published, it's only available in a medium that you can't back order, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of them you can back order, some of them you can't. Some of them are just available online for free right now. So there's a mix of things that you can get elsewhere and things you can't. There's also one story in there which I have never had out anywhere else called Dear Grom, which is why the collection is named Dear Grom and Other Stories. So for 11 stories by me in a convenient book form for just $7.77, you can get them right now, and I think you'll enjoy them.
Or if you want to wait a few days, they're $14.99, but then you get a physical copy
Yes,
that Eneasz will sign if you ask him nicely if you see him while holding it.
absolutely. You don't even have to ask nicely. You can just ask. And I'll be like, that looks like my book. Oh my God, I will totally sign that if you'd like.
Awesome.
I ran into someone in the real world just a few days ago for the very first time that had a copy and asked me to sign it. And I don't know, it felt really cool. I was like, oh my God, yes, absolutely. And a final update is that we were talking about the Litecoin fundraiser that had been going on for a while. It is over now, and they did reach their 2 million We Can Survive benchmark. So the Litecoin is going to keep going, and Lighthaven's going to be around for a while still. I don't think they got to the full 3 million. People can continue to donate whenever you want, but the official drive is over, and they are going to make it. So thank you, everybody. That's really freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that they got through.
Shall we move on to the less wrong posts?
Yeah, a couple of fun ones. These are
Yeah.
lighthearted and a good time. You want to start with Zombies, the movie?
I do. This is a script for a movie which is hilarious and I love it. And it's about a zombie invasion, except the zombie virus turns people into philosophical zombies, where they're identical in every single way, except they no longer have consciousness, apparently.
Exactly. And there's a few fun little Easter eggs. You know, the zombie invasion just started 28 days ago. And fun fact, yesterday I was watching the movie 28 days later.
Oh, it's so good.
Because I think next month or maybe sometime next few months, 28 years later is coming out.
Oh, shit.
Don't worry, it hasn't been quite 28 years since the first movie, but it's
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's been close.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, let me know when you see it if it's any good.
I will. The second one was really good, so I have high hopes for the third. But yeah, the premise of this is like you said, they turn into pea zombies, and I don't want to spoil the ending, so I won't. But there's some great lines. You and I both pulled out one of the same ones. The scientist says, "We're dealing with an epiphenomenal virus, General Fred. Are you sure? scientists, as sure as we can be in the total absence of evidence.
This entire post is just comedic gems like this.
Yeah.
The scientist replies a little bit later, they've tried every placebo in the book. No dice. Everything they do has an effect.
And then they, of course, have to call in David Chalmers, who says this is a complete bastardization of my work. And then they're like, you're a zombie. And he's like, no, I'm perfectly fine. I've been introspecting on my own consciousness, and I can't detect any difference. I know I'd be expected to say that, but then the doctor turns away from the glass screen in horror. His words, they don't mean anything.
It's fucking great. It fills my heart with joy to see someone ripping on a stupid idea like pea zombies in this way. This is exactly what would happen if someone claimed to not be a pea zombie.
Or claim to be one.
Yeah, either way. There's nothing you can prove either way because it's epiphenomenal.
Yeah. And, no spoilers, but Daniel Dennett does show up with a katana, so...
All right, that was a fun post. Not much to say about it, aside from go and read it. You will probably laugh.
Yes. I think I'll also laugh at the second one, which is a lot of fun and a similar kind of vibe, but this one actually has a lot of great meat to it. 3 dialogues on identity.
So he is trying to set up an intuition pump, I think, basically, right?
Yeah.
So he brings up there's some primitive tribes that think that photographs can steal their souls. A tribe is being visited by a researcher, and this tribe in particular detests being lied to. If they ever find out that someone has lied to them, then they're like persona non grata in their society. If they're an outsider, they get exiled out. They hear about this photograph stealing souls thing. And so the chief asks the researcher, have you, by any means whatsoever, by any device, produced an image of anyone here?
And he had to phrase it exactly that way.
Because then the researcher's like, well, I mean, shit. My eyes and my retina are constantly painting image in my visual cortex. So due to the fact that he knows they really want complete honesty all the time, he's like, I haven't made any pictures the way you mean it. You ask a deeper question than you know, according to the beliefs of my people.
I think that's the line that I liked a lot, and because it comes up in 2 of these at least. And so he's giving like this kind of him-hawing answer, and the guy's like, "Why aren't you just saying no?" It's like, because I can't lie, but also no, I haven't taken your picture. But you guys don't know what happens when you look at things.
Yeah, exactly. And so ultimately the shaman wants to cut down to the root of the issue, and he's like, look, that's nonsense. Just tell us, do we still have our souls since you came amongst us or not? And the guy's like, oh, fuck. It's the teaching of my people that what you call a soul is a confused idea.
Yeah.
And then the poor dude gets exiled.
He keeps saying, I've painted no picture and used no camera. Have you caused a picture by any other means? Damn it. No, not the way you mean. And so, like, it's exactly the kind of conversation, if you're having this with, like, a police officer or an interrogator, these kind of answers would get you grilled, right?
Yeah. Then when he asks, do we have souls? The guy's like, well, no. But that's not because I've been making pictures.
I didn't take them. They just weren't there before.
Yeah, exactly. The poor tribesman and the poor researcher, just too many inferential gaps.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the poor tribesman and researcher. We then move on to the second conversation with John Smith, who was cryopreserved and then restored about 35 years later, but for a subjective 24 hours, so he's just kind of reeling and getting back on his feet, we might say.
Mm-hmm. And he also, like the tribesman, does not want to be lied to. So he says, look, I don't want to be told any comforting lies. If you can't tell me, just say nothing. And then he asks, have I been uploaded? Have I been turned into a program? Am I an algorithm somewhere? And the guy talking to him, the cryo unfreezer guy, who says, like, what were you before? A constant integer?
Fuck you, pal.
Because, like, yeah, we're all algorithms somewhere. So John says, no. I mean, am I made up of the same atoms as before or not? This gets back to the recent posts we had about there are no individual atoms. So the guy tries to tell him, you may be laboring under certain basic misconceptions.
You know what I like about that line, too, is it reminds me of one of the great scenes in, it would have been Order of the Phoenix. They come to arrest Dumbledore. I remember the line because it was awesome. They're going to arrest him, or they're like interrogating him about Dumbledore's army, which is Harry's group that they put together to teach actual defense classes. Then when they're just like, all right, well, come along, Dumbledore. He's like, oh, you seem to be laboring under a serious misunderstanding. I have no intention of coming quietly.
Nice.
But yeah, so John, he's like, look, am I made of the same atoms? Yes or no? Whatever the stuff I am made of, is it the same stuff as before? What's a bummer is that I can see he just needs to phrase his question a little differently, and they could get a real answer.
I mean, maybe. He says, whatever stuff I am made of, is it the same stuff as before? Yes or no? And they just don't have a way to answer that due to the fundamental wrongness about thinking about stuff, that atoms are individual things that you can identify rather than places where there's concentrations of probability mass.
Yeah, but he could ask a question like, am I running on the same level of reality I was running on 35 years ago? Am I still a complicated wave function, something, or am I running on a different substrate? And he asks about the hardware. I don't know. I feel like he was this close to getting the right question. Whereas I think the gap here is smaller than it was with the tribesman and
The dude seemed to be oddly attached to his own physical body, which I mean I've seen with some cryonicists, and it feels strange to me.
I share this the sentimental attachment to my meat suit,
Yeah.
even though I don't like it most of the time.
Right.
If I were to change, I at least want to know. I mean, you don't even need to get quantum to be confused, like the way that he's asking this. Am I made of the same atoms? And it's like, no, you weren't made of the same atoms 5 minutes before you died. And also, then you get quantum when you say, what do you mean same atoms? But
Right.
what he could ask is, am I made of what scientists in my time called carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, etc., right? And they'd be like, "Oh no, you're running on electricity now."
Well, this does get us into the final dialogue. It's Eliezer waking up kind of in the same situation, I think. He is conversing with some powerful entity in the future. He says, "Look, is the thing I'm holding an old-fashioned banana, or does it only have the appearance of a banana?" And the entity says, "Rest assured that you are not holding the mere appearance of a banana. There really is a banana there, not just a collection of atoms." Which raises a lot of questions. It very much reminds me of the line in the Rationalist Matrix that was part of the Omake files, where Neo, after learning, that everything he was learned in the Matrix was wrong, asks for a real physics textbook so he can figure out how the real world works. And Morpheus says to him, "What makes you think that the universe runs on math?"
Right. Or I think he says the real world doesn't run on math or something. But yeah, same.
Okay.
I only remember it because it was delivered in Drake Walker's delightfully deep booming voice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Neo, the real world doesn't run on math. So I think I understand the banana question, and I understand the answer. But what's fun in this post is that then, after he says there is a real banana there, not just a collection of atoms, and then there's a long pause, and Eliezer says, "What?" Or perhaps that was only a joke, is the reply. But I think what he's saying is like, look, no, this isn't just a representation of a banana like the one you pick up in Skyrim, right?
No, I think the intended implication here is that it's not just a representation of banana like the one you pick up in Skyrim or the one you pick up in the real world in 2025. The implication is that that atoms themselves are a simulation and we just don't know it yet, or that the real world runs on spirit and the logos or something, and turns out that the Gnostics were right all along. Like, just that reality is so fundamentally different from what we think of reality is that just imagine if that were to happen to you, like what would happen to your brain, and be ready for it.
And we can't rule out the possibility that we'll come across that sort of paradigm shifting discovery at some point.
Yeah.
I was about to say it's not clear at all to me what that could possibly mean, but that is exactly the point, right?
Yeah.
It's not clear to the hunter-gatherer guy what it would mean what do you mean my soul doesn't exist? I'm an expert on souls.
Yes.
And it's not clear to John Smith that, no, man, the stuff I was made of before, I'm not made of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, things might be different. This is just a fun and short cautionary tale on some of what you believe is true and some of what you believe is false. This may also be said of the hunter-gatherer. And I do like this, though. There's a difference between yourself and the hunter-gatherer, which is this. You have a concept of what it means for a fundamental assumption to be mistaken. The hunter-gatherer has no experience with other cultures that believe differently, no history that tells of past scientific revolutions. But you know what is meant, whether or not you accept it. You understand the assertion itself. Some of your fundamental assumptions are mistaken.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't know how to respond to that news. I guess I'd want to ask which ones, and then sit down for an 8-hour explanation that I wouldn't understand.
This brings me to sort of like a meta content question. Like, reading these two Less Wrong posts again reminded me of like, oh yeah, these used to be really fun. I kind of miss that. I want to get through the quantum sequences maybe as fast as possible here and just touch quickly on what each one is saying in the future rather than trying to really dive into them, especially because they're kind of getting over my head. And because I think, as Eliezer even kind of hints at here, this may not be our true final understanding of the universe as it is.
Yeah, I support that decision. But I do commend, and now that we're especially this far in it, this isn't mere sunk cost. This is now I want to finish for the sake of having finished it. We will finish the quantum physics posts, but I'm also eager to we'll move through them quickly, but we'll still move through them.
Well, for next time, we are not reading any sequence posts because we have already recorded our next interview and it went pretty long, and there will not be time for additional sequence stuff after that whole episode is done.
But it was great. You guys will have fun.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a great episode.
There is the last and most fun thing that we get to do, which unfortunately is your turn, so I don't get to.
Sucks to be you, but hell yeah, it's awesome to be me. This week, our thanks to a patron supporting us goes out to Drunken Master.
High five.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for mastering whatever you have mastered while drunk. I like that we continue to have these lists of people that we can read and thank every week.
Me too. By all means, find our links for support either at Substack or Patreon in the show notes. I want to point out, too, if anyone remembers, this is the handle of the guy that we spoke with that we met at Vibe Camp 3, who talked about the value of fighting. This was maybe we recorded about a year ago?
No, less, because Vibe Camp 3 wasn't a year ago.
No, you're right. Yeah, just seems like a year ago.
Right. There's been a lot that's happened lately.
Anyway, thanks, man. You rock. We appreciate it. And thank you to everyone else who's listening and supporting or not. We're big fans of you, and we appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah. I have come to lean more heavily on the income that I get from the podcast now, and it really does mean even more so to me now. So thank you, everybody.
I always say you guys make it possible, but it's true. So thank you. We are buying new equipment for recording, and there is some amount of this that goes to our pockets. And as Enosh said, that money is coming in handy. So.
Oh yeah. Also, people who can rate and review us places, that also helps a lot.
Yeah, share it with a friend or an enemy.
Right.
Whoever. Thanks, Enosh. I appreciate it.
Thanks, too. Have a good night.